It's just 10 o'clock now. Good morning. It just turned 10 o'clock, so let's give everybody a few moments. So we are recording this information session, just letting everybody know as they come into the Zoom that this will be recorded, but we will be letting a few more people in before we officially get started, but this is being recorded. Good morning and welcome. Still going to give everybody maybe another 2 minutes or so to join on this Monday morning. If you've just joined, we are recording this for your information. Welcome if you've just joined us. Give everybody maybe 1 more minute before starting. Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started now. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Just again, a quick note that we are recording this. That's our disclosure. Welcome to our information session about the RFP for Owners Advisory Services for the Trust's Alternative Project Delivery Program. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk through a little typical housekeeping items. We're going to have Vlada Kniff, the president of the Trust, do an introduction to our fledgling agency. And then I, Jenny Gillette, the Chief Project Officer here at the Trust, I'm going to speak about the Modernization and Preservation Program that we have being developed here, a little bit about what's been happening and what's going to happen. And then I will give a high-level overview of some of the key parts of the request for proposals that hopefully everyone here is interested and going to submit. And at the very end, I'll have a little bit of additional information for folks on Section 3 and a couple of useful links. So just to note, we are not going to be taking live Q&A during this information session. We are encouraging everybody to make use of our procurement platform, Bonfire, which I hope all of you have already become familiar with, given that you're here. But here is the link to the Preservation Trust procurement portal. If you need to take a picture of this with your phone, go ahead and do it, but hopefully you've already become familiar with it. We are recording this information session, and we will be posting a recording of this on Bonfire as well. So if you want to share it with colleagues, or if you missed something, it will be there. We will also post a PDF of this presentation on Bonfire and also on our Trust website. And we will also post a list of attendees to this information session on Bonfire on our website, just noting that this would be a tremendous opportunity for some of the networking and connections I hope that everybody is here to make. Other interested vendors, I think teaming is probably going to be a pretty important piece of this RFP. So hopefully the attendees here will get in touch with one another and network to create the best possible team. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vlada Kniff, President of the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust, to give an introduction of our agency.
Jenny, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Let's go to the next slide. And really glad to be here. I am celebrating a year at the Trust, so it's fitting that we are kicking off the next year with some really important work that Jenny will dive into. But a couple of quick reminders around, how the Trust came about, what are the needs for the Trust, and we are created to serve NYCHA. NYCHA is a city within a city. I have to remind myself, I have to remind everybody every time I do a public engagement or a speaking event. We are serving 1 in 17 New Yorkers, low-income New Yorkers, and servicing 177, well, NYCHA does, 177,000 units, over 2,000 residential buildings, over 300 developments. And I continue to say NYCHA because I served NYCHA for over 7 years and still at heart NYCHA. Let's go to the next slide. So when I started in 2017, there's some 17s in the narrative here. The physical needs assessment was about $17 billion. And when I came in, I was standing up a sustainability program, and that was scary. $17 billion in needs is very scary. We later on developed a sustainability agenda, which was targeting a $40 billion need. That estimate came shortly after I came in. And so, $40 billion is significant compared to the 17, but the buildings are not waiting for us. The need continued to grow. The federal government has walked away from the Section 9 programs over 3 decades ago, and buildings are not waiting for us. The quality of life issues that you typically hear about in the news and that our operational teams are dealing with day to day are related to failing systems, failing boilers, failing plumbing systems. Many of the pest and waste complaints are related to failing waste management equipment, elevator breakdowns, etc. And so it is really important that there are programs in place for 177,000 units in our portfolio, and there are already modernization programs in place, and Jenny will speak to them in more detail later on, but additional programs needed to be established. Let's go to the next slide. And so many residents, community advocates, many folks in New York City have recognized that something else needed to be done. And although there's a private solution that, again, Jenny will cover later on, and there's some comprehensive modernization programs that have already been developed or in the progress of being developed through NYCHA and through the HUD agreement, more needed to be done. And so next slide. With resident advocacy, with community advocacy, many folks traveled in Albany and pitched the idea of the Preservation Trust to Governor Hochul, and in 2022, the legislation for trusts, the Trust Act, was passed. And the trust was created to be a partner to the New York City Housing Authority. So I love to show this history in green and yellow circles, because to me, as a public servant of 20 years and having to advance multiple programs, multiple billion-dollar programs, I've actually not seen something be established as quickly as the trust has been. In 2020, it was just an idea sketched on a whiteboard. In 2022, it became legislation. And as a result of that legislation, voting procedures had to be finalized and created. The only way the trust becomes active is if the residents do vote for us and opt in to be a part of the trust. And so none of this infrastructure existed and needed to be created. And so you can see December of 2022, those procedures were created. The board was appointed just a little bit over a year ago. The first employee started in 2023, just a little over a year ago. And 2 days ago, last year, the board appointed me. And we had a few months before the first property had opted in. You see Julian, the chief operating officer here on screen, and it was myself, the general counsel, and Julian the first 3 months. We had a little bit of time to think about what the institution is going to be like, what our visual identity will be. And so you'll see some of the foundational work that we had time to do at the time. We also released the request for expressions of interest to the industry to figure out, how to proceed, how to build out this institution, how to be really intentional about the foundational work that needed to happen. And that actually paid off. So let's go to the next slide. In those early days, in those first 3 months, we did a lot of interviews with the resident board members to really define what the trust mission has to be, and also create our values. And so we actually, per the legislation, have to release our strategic plan this November. And so we're now daylighting some of that work that happened in those early days. We've kind of put it on a shelf because as we completed that foundational work and completed the RFEI, we got our first property, and we knew that we needed to move forward with putting together the design build solicitation to figure out what the capital stack looked like. And so we really dove into the iterations for close to $700 million worth of work. And you've seen us out. Many of you have come out to our industry event. Many of you have responded to the RFQ, and we'll be moving into the next phases of that shortly. But again, as a part of the Trust Act, we do have to have a mission. And so we're daylighting it both by adopting it in our board meeting on the 24th, and also including it in the strategic plan, which I encourage you to check out. We did post it as a draft version on our website, and some of this information is now there. But the trust mission is to safeguard public housing as a sustainable foundation for community and opportunity. By empowering residents and modernizing our buildings, the trust secures a vibrant future for generations of New Yorkers. All right, next slide. I mentioned our values. Again, it's something we started to develop in the very early days of the trust. But now that we have a strategic plan and we're going out into solicitations and we're hiring folks, we really want everyone that joins the team, including the selected owner's advisor as a part of this solicitation, we want you to understand our values. So let's go through them. Resident empowerment, put residents first. That's how the trust was created. We have residents serving on our board, and we've been really thoughtful about how we communicate and how we work with residents, including their feedback into our solicitations, etc. And so it is one of our first values. And you'll see Jenny will dive into how these values translate into our capabilities. Next slide. Action-oriented excellence, get it done. We're all about that, and the urgency of the work that needs to happen. As you know, $80 billion in need, residents that are living in buildings that are in really difficult conditions. I spend at least I spent over a year going to managing the bias consent decree, and I've seen things in really, really poor condition as it relates to mold. And so this urgency is real, very real, and we need to be focused, but we need to produce high quality outcomes. And so with that comes, we both have to move quickly, but we also have to make sure that anything we put out is extremely high quality. Next one. Many of you know, and I mentioned it before, I spent the majority of my 20-year career as a public servant focused on sustainability. So it's not a surprise that this value is here and we'll continue to be focused on it. But we do need to, not only this is a moment to rebuild, but rebuild for the future and make our communities more resilient. And so that is one of our values. Next slide. This one is probably the most important, particularly for the set of folks that are on this call, right? The owner's advisor RFP is really created to do exactly what it says here. We've moved forward with a traditional design build on the first 2 solicitations because we know how to do that. I've taken 2 projects on NYCHA side through a traditional design build lump sum model. But under the legislation, we have construction manager at risk. We have progressive design build. We heard through the RFI that these are of interest to the industry. We haven't done them before. So again, although we're in a get it done mindset, we do want to innovate in an informed way. I'll also tell you a little bit of a story how this is important. And since the creation of the trust, we've had incredible support from other housing authorities, other folks that are in the space. And last Thanksgiving, the woman who's set up a program at the Cambridge Housing Authority sent me and Jillian an email that was, multiple pages explaining how they set things up and what we should be watching out for. So, there's a folks have done similar things like the trust and, leveraging various delivery models in other places. And so we're not, sitting there and kind of waiting for deciding in the vacuum. We are asking folks and people are coming to us. And so we also know that we don't know everything. And this is why we need the industry support in building out this program. But we want to do it very carefully. Okay, next slide. Collaborative strength. I do want to say that we have incredible support and executive sponsorship of Lisa Bova-Hyatt, who is the CEO of NYCHA, but also the chair of the trust. She sits on our board. I meet with her regularly and she's always a phone call away. So the partnership with NYCHA is incredibly strong. There are many other executive sponsors who have been really incredible in helping us build out the foundational work over the course of the last year. But there are other agencies like the School Construction Authority, Stacy Tyson. She is our chief procurement officer, but also leads similar work at the School Construction Authority. And when I asked Nina Kubota, who I also have quarterly meetings with and have known her for years, when I asked her for the help of another capital agency, she did not flinch. And so I think that it's been really important for us to not only act in this way, but really record this as a foundational value and how we move forward together as this new institution. That's it for me. I'm going to pass it on to Jenny to dive into the modernization and preservation program.
Thank you, Vlada. Some inspiring words from our wonderful president, again, celebrating her 1-year anniversary a few days ago. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the modernization and preservation program, generally about the projects that we have already started working on and the ones in the future. Next slide. But I'm going to start with our strategic capabilities. So you'll recognize a lot of the words that Vlada spoke about our mission and our values and what we see as our core strategic capabilities as an agency, starting with resident partnership. So as also Vlada mentioned, Key to this program is our residents, but very specifically that there is a vote conducted. Residents must vote to be part of the trust. I think this is really just a sea change in the way that the agencies interact with their residents, with the way that people interact with their clients. All of these things are so critically important to really have a successful relationship with the folks that use these resources. I believe in the RFP itself, there's a link to more information on the voting process. NYCHA has now run 3 successful votes for properties. It's about a 100-day period of presenting options and educating folks about what the different options for their renovation program is going to be. And I think it sets the tone for the relationship, because we are working with people who have been explained what the trust is and have opted into doing it. And that's just the beginning of a relationship that we hope to kind of continue through design and construction and throughout asset management, the entire life cycle of this work. We want to be sure that residents are our partners. So for you finance folks in the crowd, and I hope there are some of you, because this is an incredibly critical piece to understand our program and also to work successfully to develop our delivery models. We have a unique ability, unlike most other city agencies, to raise debt from the use, I'm starting with the middle checkbox here, from the use of municipal bonds. We are also transitioning projects from Section 9 to Section 8 federal program, which roughly doubles the funding that's available to do the work that needs to be done on these projects. So when Vlada highlighted the incredible need of these properties, we have new additional resources to provide those repairs to these properties. This is an important fact to understand, but also will be an important part of the development process with the capital delivery program, is the financing piece. So the reason most of you are probably here is our capital project delivery capability. This is sort of a general slide. Hopefully you guys are the subject matter experts here, but you understand that we are able to select on best value with our alternative delivery process. And those of you who have been working with the city and other governments know that this is, we hardly need to say more. We don't need to do a linear design bid build process. We don't need to have the lowest responsible bidder awarded our work. This cuts schedule, this cuts costs, but I think, for me, most critically, we are allowed to communicate exactly what we mean by best value and select integrated teams that can deliver on that. We've also provided in the RFP, and you can find it publicly available, links to our legislation that enables us with some pretty unique delivery capabilities. Vlada mentioned some of them already, and that's what we're here to do, to select partners who can support us as we build out some pretty unique ways for this region to deliver on these wonderful characteristics that the legislation allows us. And last but not least, oversight and asset management. This is a program that we'll see more of in the future once we actually have some assets completed. But we are continue to be the ones monitoring NYCHA's operations. We will continue to have increased funding sources to be able to do repairs, state of good repairs that are so critical. But we are very much in the driver's seat with the quality of property management, working very, very closely these months and years with NYCHA's operations to really provide a higher level of service to the properties that have opted in to our program. So I want to step back for a moment and just talk about NYCHA in general here. I've included a link here at the bottom to a white paper on comprehensive modernization. Some of you may be familiar with the CompMod program. So it is both uppercase CompMod, I say. There's a department within NYCHA that has been working for many years now at this point to develop this strategy. It has released solicitations, but it's also another real sea change, in my opinion, for how NYCHA is viewing its capital investments. Really, them and so many other agencies have a real history of really band-aiding the problems at their assets, really doing the minimum of what they need to do in order to keep the property minimally functional. And this is really not a great long-term strategy, but as you are aware, our buildings have decades of history and intense use and intense need, and it's really not been a strategy that has served anybody. It's not served NYCHA capital, it's not served residents, it's not served the city in a way that really befits the task. And so the agency NYCHA as a whole is trying to move towards a model where they comprehensively modernize their properties, really taking a deeper look at systems replacement, holistic evaluation of problems, and really, going in and I would say actually embodying a lot of the Trust's mission in terms of sustainable and resilient infrastructure for the housing. It's really an approach. And so the Trust really is adopting this approach as much as possible. We are looking to comprehensively modernize the properties that we engage with. And so I encourage you to visit the NYCHA website, download the white paper. It's the approach to scope that we are committed to as well. And you'll learn a lot, I think, in general about the good work that NYCHA and the Trust are doing here. So right now, I talked a little bit about voting. So this is sort of a little bit more granular about what the options are for residents to vote into, and a little bit more of an explanation of exactly how we're achieving this comprehensive modernization. So there are 3 programs right now that are active, and you may have heard of some of these. The first one here is PACT, the PACT program. The city has, with NYCHA, committed to modernizing, something like 60,000+ housing units. It's the longest standing, very successful program for the kind of deep work to renovate properties that NYCHA has. It involves NYCHA and a private management company and residents. This is a key difference that I think is important to highlight. They do the same conversion to the federal Section 8 program, and they transition again to private management, but there is, of course, public oversight in this model. The second option that residents have is to remain Section 9. So the amount of money available for funds, remains the same, generally speaking. It's pretty much business as usual. However, this is the program by which NYCHA's Comp Mod team has been able to, with a very specific funding source, been able to do these comprehensive modernizations. So as a result of the 2019 HUD agreement, the NYCHA had access to some really substantial funding, although remaining Section 9, to actually go in deep and do comprehensive modernizations. But they don't convert, and the management stays the same. So you'll hear a lot about that. And then there's us, the Trust, which really we are positioned like a real estate developer. So we are responsible for the debt raise, leveraging that increased subsidy, really locating the sources. And I think the real key difference here is that there is no private landlord or manager involved. NYCHA continues to manage the property. So we talked a little about our strategic capabilities. This is, I think, core to why a property would opt into the Trust, is that we have access to these increased resources. We have access to better project delivery methods, but they have continuity of property management, which will also say a lot about the team that works at that particular development. And this is a choice. This is really a choice between these options. And so those properties that we will be working with, they have chosen this particular strategy. So just a brief overview of the scale and the scope of the type of work that the trust is going to be doing. As you can see, it's, we're looking at 25,000 apartments, which translates into 35 plus developments, depending on how you slice it. It really has the potential to impact a tremendous amount of residents. But it's a pretty sizable need we'll be addressing in our program. And the scopes here, again, they'll look familiar if you're familiar with the comp mod work, and will vary depending on the project, but they really look to do some pretty serious systems upgrades, elevator upgrades, electrical, HVAC, a lot of hazmat work, water efficiency, all these things. These are the typical types of scopes that we're going to be looking at. Next slide. So to date, we have had 3 properties vote into the trust. The first 2 Nostrand houses, Bronx River Edition, you may already be familiar with. They are currently in procurement. We are evaluating the statements of qualifications from our RFQ, and we'll be releasing the RFPs for these projects shortly. We made use of NYCHA's comp mod team for these first 2 procurements. They had a lump sum design build process that we adopted to get moving as quickly as possible on these projects. Yeah, some of you may be familiar with it, may have submitted put your hat in the ring for that. Very recently, I think it was August 23rd, maybe a week or 2 ago, we received an affirmative vote for our 3rd project site in Coney Island, Unity Towers. It's also known as Unity Towers. Has about an $83 million physical needs assessment capital need. And right now, as you heard, it's just, we got it about a week or 2 ago. We're just kind of pulling together some documents and initiating that project now. There is a vote that was launched, I believe, again, I think, last week, sort of simultaneously, another Brooklyn development called Highland. And they'll be engaging with the residents for the next few months. Voting will happen in November, and we should hear back results in December as to which program they have opted into. In general, we don't have a full look ahead of the specific properties or numbers, although there are plenty of discussions about this, but votes right now are expected to occur quarterly, and depending on the size and the scale of the development, 1 to 2 sites per cycle. So that's the general anticipation. So that in mind, that program, I'm going to talk a little bit about the RFP itself, the requirements. Next slide. So this is a very broad overview, which hopefully you guys already are familiar with since you are here. It has aspects of program development, standing up this program, of the delivery methods that we have not really ever really done so much of around here. Project execution, actually being the owner's representative on actual projects that vote into the trust. And then all the architecture and engineering and construction management technical support that you would expect on an owner's side to develop technical documents, evaluate technical submissions, really a sort of a soup to nuts team with a real emphasis on developing a program and having the capability to execute the first couple of projects in the pipeline. It's right, the contract term for this is a 3-year contract term with 2 1-year renewals possible at 30 million, and then an option for the additional 10 per renewal year. So this, I just want to kind of bring this to everybody's attention here, where we are in this schedule and what's happening. It's a little bit of a tight timeline, I guess, but I think it's more than doable given the details and the credentials of the folks I've seen registered on this Zoom. We issued the RFP last week. You're all here for the information session. Please submit questions, as many questions as you can via Bonfire. We have already released an addendum if you haven't seen that. Please check that out. That was on Friday with a few questions. We had a few questions and a couple of exhibits from the RFP form of contract that we added in. The proposal due date is due at the end of the month. So you've got a couple weeks to find your team, identify your staff, get your documents in order, and ask questions. We are reserving the right to call some of you folks up for interviews, not necessarily a requirement, but just kind of wanted to, to plan around the possibility of us giving you a phone call and asking you to come and talk through some of the pieces of your proposal. We are really looking to evaluate and select by the end of October, with the intent that any contract negotiations will happen after that. And we will present it to our board right before Thanksgiving. Again, all of the board meetings, just another plug, are available on YouTube and have public access. Just encourage you to look at those. But the goal of this is to award the contract officially in December to get everybody onboarded, before the Christmas holidays, New Year's holidays, really familiar with us and really ready to start cranking in 2025. So this should not be, instead of reading the RFP very carefully, but I will go over again at a very high level, broad strokes, what these services really are that I touched on earlier. Owner's advisor, help us develop the program. So we've got a couple of different delivery mechanisms via the legislation. We have not built them out yet. So processes, procedures, tools, manuals, we need help to understand what is required. We need tools to get it done. We need education materials to help us and our NYCHA and other stakeholders understand what they're doing, how they can impact the work, how they can engage our staff, your staff, everybody's staff. We need to set up the program. As I mentioned, we also want a team in place to deliver the first couple of projects here. So act as our owner's representative. So you are the administrative project management, manage these capital projects from the owner's side through all phases, from project planning all the way through to asset turnover. So we need your project managers, we need your folks who know how to drive meetings and direct designers, and really be in charge of these projects to get us what we've all agreed that we want. And then all the attendant technical support on both a project and program level. So this would support ideally the owner's advisor and owner's representative. These are your architects, engineers, project controls folks, cost estimating, risk, all these things that are required to deliver a project. But we're also looking to understand program-wide metrics, program-wide project controls, all of that. So it's really a full suite of services to stand up our program and to run projects for the next couple of years. Again, I don't want to read through every single piece, and this should not be a substitute for reading through the RFP, but just kind of wanted to call attention to a little bit of what we're looking for. I am a believer in identifying what we mean by best value. I think you heard this from me before. What does best value mean to us? And then telling you how to give it to us, and then giving it to us rather. So we're going to be looking at these different categories. We will be looking at your qualifications and experience, generally speaking, asking for case studies where you've done program development, where you've run projects, where you have had experience in large occupied construction, residential construction, affordable housing, all of these things. We want to understand your background, both in project execution and in alternative delivery, generally speaking. So both pieces here. Key personnel, proposed team, all of this stuff. So we've included a list of who we think the core team of key personnel are, and you absolutely need to have these folks on your team. It's kind of a cross-sectional, interdepartmental bunch, because that's who the trust, that's who we are. And we also want to hear from you. So in your narrative, we want to understand what we haven't seen, what has, if anything, has been our blind spot here. Who do we absolutely need on our core team for developing this program? So, we accept, suggestions, and as long as they're justified as to what exactly they would be contributing. And again, the friendly org chart to understand how everybody relates to one another, and how everybody kind of rolls up into a comprehensible, organization is quite important to us personally, but also in such a complex landscape that we live in. A technical approach also incredibly important. One of the reasons we spent so much time talking to you about the trust and included so many links in the RFP is we want you to take some time to understand the trust as much as you possibly can. We are a pretty unique organization, not just for the region, but the country as well. We're not the only folks, as Vlada mentioned, who are doing things like this, but we are pretty special in the way we are both legislatively allowed to operate and how we aspire to operate. So please take some time to familiarize yourself with all the things that we have said. I'll also do another plug for our strategic plan available on our website. I think it's under the Transparency and Governance tab. You can comment on it, you can read it. It's a very cool document. Please take a look at that. Sample work plan, let us know how you would hit one of these programs. We're not going to necessarily hold you to it, but how you would plan to organize yourselves and organize us is a pretty important piece to us wanting to work together. Project execution in general, again, you'll have heard this in a lot of our mission, our goals. We want to be lean, we want to be agile, we want to be efficient. One of the things I really appreciated once I started to get into different kinds of alternative delivery is, the ability, like, we don't have to do things over and over and over again the way you do with a traditional kind of waterfall linear delivery process. We have the ability to strategically iterate and to really allow feedback into the creative process. And we want to hear how you see that from an owner's perspective, from the oversight team specifically. So again, you'll pardon my love of org charts, but really how you would put that together, how you would put together an oversight team is going to be important for us to look at. Price proposal, pretty straightforward, although there are some details in the RFP. I urge you to read through how we're asking you to put together things like your multiplier. That's kind of, there are just some details in there. We've provided some forms to help support that. Questions, again, through Bonfire. And then there'll be a narrative on MWBE and Section 3 business enterprises, generally speaking, an approach to how they might participate in your team and in our projects, how you're going to engage the community, and overall the compliance requirements that we have and that we want to meet and exceed. I will also just put that in there. So that's also part of our evaluation. So we've included a little bit of additional information here. Deb, just go to the next slide, please. If you can. So again, we're going to release this on Bonfire and on our website, but for those of you who are not that familiar with Section 3, here are some resources that we've put together. If you're not familiar with SBS and the city's MWBE program, some links here, a little bit on HUD Section 3 pieces down here. This is just a little bit of support to everybody. You can either, again, take a picture of this, or you can wait and get the PDF and the download, but this should help everybody start to understand some areas maybe you don't know so much about. And then the next slide, please. So just to close it out, we're doing everything through Bonfire right now. Please don't reach out to us individually. We are really working with this really great platform. Apologies if we've got some kinks. We are open to feedback about it and we are responsive, but please use this portal for communication and information. And a lot of the things that we've mentioned today will be on our website, preservationtrust.org. That includes, in general, all of our solicitations that we're doing. Many of you hopefully are kind of cross-sectional yourselves, so we have other solicitations that we're releasing. that it will be there. We occasionally have job opportunities. I don't want to say that because maybe, we'll steal somebody fantastic. Don't want to do that. Transparency and governance. That's the section that has, I believe, links to our the YouTube where we have our board meetings, but also the strategic plan, whole bunch of information. Again, it will be important to us when you prepare these proposals that you have taken some time to think about who we are specifically and how your firm is uniquely positioned to help us grow our program and our capabilities. With that, I am going to say thank you. Thanks to everybody for coming. I am so excited about this program. It's a wonderful team. I'm relatively new to the trust. I've been here about 4 or 5 months now. I could not have asked for a more thoughtful and dedicated group of people who are engaged both on the trust side, the NYCHA side, the developments. It's just been a really wonderful experience for me, and I think that you will find the same thing should you work with us. So please reach out via Bonfire with any questions, and thanks to everybody for taking the time out today.